I sat there, heart swelling with pride, eager to watch my grandson Ethan take the stage for his first school play, until my daughter-in-law Claire leaned in, her voice icy and deliberate, and whispered, "Your presence isn't needed here." In that moment, the joy of the occasion shattered, and I felt the weight of exclusion settle heavily on my chest, realizing I was no longer welcome in the family I had cherished for so long. Hey friends, real quick, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments, I read every single one. And if this story hits you even a little, tap like, hit that subscribe, and share it with someone who needs. At the local elementary school, the auditorium buzzed with the excited chatter of parents and children alike. I settled into my seat near the front, clutching my program tightly, my heart swelling with pride. Today was my grandson Ethan's big day, his first school play. Surrounded by familiar faces, my son Michael, my daughter-in-law Claire, and their two younger children, the room felt warm and full of promise. I had driven an hour just to be here, eager to witness this milestone and share a moment of joy with my family. The stage was set simply but charmingly, adorned with colorful backdrops and handmade props. The other parents smiled knowingly as their children took their places, nerves mingling with excitement. I caught Michael's eye and smiled. He winked back, a gesture full of shared anticipation. Claire sat beside him, her arm resting lightly on his, her expression polite but reserved. She glanced at me briefly, offering a tight smile before turning her attention back to the children. As the play began, Ethan stepped confidently forward, his voice clear and bright. I found myself beaming with pride, whispering encouragements under my breath. Around me, the audience responded with laughter and applause, the air thick with the collective warmth of family and community. Yet, beneath the surface of this cheerful gathering, I sensed a subtle tension, an undercurrent I couldn't immediately place. During one of the intermissions, as the children lined up backstage and the room filled with soft murmurs, Claire suddenly turned to me. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and her voice dropped to a whisper, sharp enough to cut through the gentle hum of conversation. "Your presence isn't needed here," she said, her tone cold and deliberate. The words struck me like an unexpected chill. I blinked, momentarily stunned, struggling to mask the sting behind my calm facade. Around us, the other parents chatted and smiled, oblivious to the quiet fracture that had just formed between us. My mouth opened slightly, searching for a reply that wouldn't betray my surprise or hurt. Instead, I nodded slowly, keeping my voice steady even as my heart clenched. "Of course," I murmured, forcing a polite smile. "I'm here to support Ethan, after all." Claire's gaze lingered on me for a moment longer before she turned away, rejoining Michael and the others. I sank back into my seat, trying to steady my breathing. The warmth of the room suddenly felt distant, the festive atmosphere muted by the sharp edge of exclusion. I watched Ethan from the corner of my eye, wanting to focus on his bright smile and confident steps, but the weight of Claire's words pressed heavily on my mind. As the play resumed, my thoughts drifted uneasily. I recalled the many family dinners, birthday parties, and casual gatherings where Claire had always been courteous but distant. Her smiles had often seemed measured, her conversation polite but guarded. At times, I had wondered if I was simply imagining the coolness, attributing it to fatigue or stress. But now, her words confirmed a deeper divide, one I had not fully acknowledged until that moment. I found myself scanning the room more closely, noticing the subtle exchanges between Claire and others. There were whispered conversations behind cupped hands, quick glances that darted away when I looked their way. It was as if an invisible barrier had been erected, isolating me from the family I had cherished for decades. The realization settled like a stone in my stomach. Yet, I refused to let this moment define my evening. I reminded myself why I was here, for Ethan, whose sparkling eyes and earnest performance deserved my undivided attention. I focused on the scenes unfolding on stage, the laughter, the songs, the innocent joy of children embracing their roles. Around me, other grandparents clapped enthusiastically, their pride unmistakable. Still, the coldness of Claire's comment echoed in my mind. "Your presence isn't needed here." Those words carried a weight I could not ignore. They hinted at a story I had not been told, a rift growing quietly beneath the surface of our family life. I wondered when it had begun, how long the distance had been creeping in unnoticed. As the final act drew near, Michael leaned toward me, whispering, "Ethan's doing great, isn't he?" His voice was warm, comforting. I smiled, grateful for his kindness, but I could not shake the feeling that something was amiss. Michael's eyes flicked toward Claire briefly, a shadow of concern crossing his features before he looked away. The curtain fell amid a round of applause, and parents began gathering their children, exchanging congratulations and taking photos. I stood slowly, smoothing my skirt, determined to remain composed despite the turmoil inside. As I approached Ethan to offer a hug and praise, Claire's presence lingered at the edges of my mind, a reminder that the family I knew was changing in ways I hadn't yet understood. Later, as we walked toward the parking lot, Claire spoke softly to Michael, her words just out of earshot. I caught only fragments, something about space, boundaries, and needing time. I felt a pang of exclusion once more, an outsider looking in on conversations that no longer included me. In the car ride home, the silence between Michael and me was thick. I wanted to ask questions, to unravel the mystery behind Claire's coldness, but I hesitated. The evening had been a celebration, after all, and I didn't want to cast a shadow over it. Instead, I resolved to observe more closely, to listen carefully, and to hold on to the hope that we could find our way back to the closeness that once defined our family. That night, as I lay awake, I replayed the moments of the day, the joy of Ethan's performance, the smiles and applause, and the sudden, sharp edge of Claire's words. I realized that beneath the surface of tradition and routine, something was shifting. The family I loved was evolving, and I would need to navigate this new terrain with patience and grace. I wondered how I would face the next gathering, the next holiday, the next chance to be part of this family. Would I be welcomed openly, or would I continue to sense the subtle, growing distance? The questions lingered, unanswered, as I drifted into a restless sleep, holding on to the hope that love, after all, could bridge even the widest divides. Since that evening at the school play, I found myself replaying Claire's words over and over in my mind. "Your presence isn't needed here." The phrase haunted me, not because I doubted my place in the family, but because it revealed a fracture I had been blind to for far too long. As days passed, I began to see the subtle signs that had been whispering beneath the surface, markings of a distance that had quietly grown between Claire and me. I started reflecting on recent family gatherings, trying to recall moments when Claire's demeanor had shifted or when I had felt unwelcome. There was that Christmas dinner last year, when she barely exchanged more than a few words with me and seemed to avoid sitting near me at the long dining table. I remembered her polite but clipped responses when I complimented her cooking, and how she had quickly turned her attention away from me to chat with others. At the time, I brushed it off as stress or fatigue, but now those memories took on a sharper clarity. It wasn't just during big celebrations. Even casual get-togethers held a strange chill. I recalled the weekend barbecues where Claire would quietly excuse herself after a few minutes, leaving me to wonder if I had said something wrong or if she simply preferred to be elsewhere. Her laughter, once easy and warm, now felt forced when directed at me, as though she was performing a role rather than enjoying my company. I began to observe her more closely during our interactions. There was a guardedness in her eyes, a hesitance in her voice that hinted at something unspoken. At family dinners, she would often lean in to whisper with Michael or the children, exchanging looks that I was clearly not part of. The way she folded her arms or shifted her posture when I approached made me feel like an intruder, even though I had done nothing to deserve such treatment. One afternoon, I happened to overhear a quiet conversation between Claire and her sister while they thought I was out of earshot. Their words were hushed, but the tone was unmistakably tense. Claire spoke of feeling overwhelmed, of needing more space, and of worries I hadn't been privy to. It was a glimpse into a world of anxiety and insecurity that I had never imagined. I felt a pang of sympathy but also confusion. How had our relationship become so strained without my knowledge? At the same time, I noticed Claire's whispered talks with other family members, brief exchanges filled with glances and half-smiles that excluded me. It was as if I had become a shadow, present but unseen, a figure on the periphery of the family circle. The more I sensed this exclusion, the more isolated I felt, as though my role as grandmother and mother-in-law was shrinking before my eyes. The subtlety of it all made it harder to confront. There was no outright hostility, no clear line drawn in the sand, just a gradual, quiet distancing that left me wondering where I stood. I found myself hesitating, questioning my every word and gesture around Claire, hoping to avoid further discomfort or conflict. The warmth and openness that had once characterized our family interactions now felt fragile, easily broken by a misplaced word or look. In quiet moments, I questioned whether Claire's behavior was rooted in something deeper, perhaps fear or insecurity. Was she feeling threatened by my presence in the family, worried that I might disrupt the delicate balance she sought to maintain? Or was there some misunderstanding that had never been addressed, growing into a silent barrier between us? The more I pondered, the more I realized that the tension was not simply about me but about the shifting dynamics within the family as a whole. I thought about Michael, caught between his wife and his mother, navigating the delicate dance of loyalty and love. Had he noticed the growing wedge between Claire and me? Did he feel torn, unsure how to bridge the gap? Our conversations had become more cautious, polite but lacking the warmth they once held. I sensed his discomfort but also his reluctance to delve into matters that might cause pain or division. One afternoon, I decided to reach out in small ways, offering to help with the children, asking Claire about her day, trying to find common ground. But her responses were brief, guarded, and sometimes distant, as if she was testing the waters but unwilling to dive in. I felt a mixture of hope and despair, wanting to believe that this was just a passing phase, that with time and patience, our relationship could heal. Yet, the whisper of exclusion lingered. At family gatherings, I often found myself on the sidelines, watching Claire and Michael exchange knowing looks, or catching moments when she would subtly steer conversations away from me. Once, at a birthday party, I overheard her say quietly to a relative, "It's just easier this way," though it was unclear what she meant. The words echoed in my mind, deepening the ache of being pushed aside. Despite the growing distance, I refused to let bitterness take root. I reminded myself that families are complex, layered with emotions and histories that are not always easily untangled. I told myself that understanding and empathy were essential, that beneath Claire's coldness there might be fears I could help soothe if given the chance. I started keeping a journal, jotting down observations and feelings, trying to make sense of the shifting landscape. Writing became a way to process the confusion and pain, to hold on to the hope that bridges could be rebuilt. I revisited old photographs, smiling at memories of laughter and closeness, determined not to let those moments be erased by silence and distance. Still, the question remained, how had this rift grown so quietly, so deeply, without warning? When had the warmth between us turned to guardedness? I realized that I had perhaps been too focused on maintaining harmony, too hesitant to address the undercurrents that now demanded attention. One evening, after another family dinner marked by polite but strained interactions, I found myself alone with Michael in the kitchen. The house was quiet except for the soft clatter of dishes. Summoning my courage, I asked gently, "Michael, have you noticed the distance between Claire and me? Is there something I should know?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair, and looked down for a moment before meeting my eyes. "Mom, it's complicated," he said softly. "Claire's been feeling overwhelmed lately. She's struggling with her own insecurities and worries about how much influence you have. It's not about you personally, but about her fear of losing control or being judged." His words resonated with me, offering a glimpse into Claire's perspective I had never fully considered. It was painful to hear, but also illuminating. I realized that the tension was not rooted in malice but in fear, a fear that had silently shaped the boundaries between us. That night, I lay awake reflecting on Michael's confession. I understood that healing would require patience, openness, and a willingness to see the situation through Claire's eyes. The road ahead would not be easy, but I was determined to try, to bridge the gap, to rebuild trust, and to reclaim the place I had cherished within this family. For now, I resolved to listen more carefully, to observe without judgment, and to be ready when the moment came to reach out and heal the quiet wounds that had grown beneath the surface. The family I loved was changing, yes, but perhaps with understanding and grace, we could find a way back to one another. After my quiet conversation with Michael, I felt a flicker of hope, a fragile thread that perhaps understanding Claire's feelings might open the door to healing. Yet, I knew that talk alone wouldn't be enough. I needed to reach out, to seek clarity, and to understand the root of the distance that had come between us. So, in the days that followed, I began quietly gathering pieces of the puzzle, speaking softly with other family members and observing the interactions that had once felt so familiar. One afternoon, I found myself alone with Michael's sister, Anne, who had always been a steady presence in our family gatherings. Over tea in her cozy kitchen, I gently broached the subject. "And, have you noticed any changes between Claire and me?" I'm trying to understand what might be causing the tension. Her eyes softened with sympathy, and she nodded slowly. "Yes, I have," and admitted. "Claire's been feeling overwhelmed, especially with the kids and everything on her plate. She's worried a lot about how people perceive her, especially you. I think she's afraid you might judge her choices or interfere, even if you don't mean to." She paused, then added, "It's complicated because Claire loves you both, but she's scared." The words struck a chord. I had never imagined that my presence, which I had always intended as supportive, could feel threatening to Claire. It made me realize how much of the situation was shaped by fears and insecurities rather than any intention to exclude or hurt me. Encouraged by Anne's openness, I sought out conversations with other relatives, my niece, my old friend who had stayed close to the family, even the children when they were willing to share. Each conversation offered small, revealing pieces: Claire's sense of being overwhelmed, her feeling of being judged, her struggle to balance motherhood, marriage, and her own identity. The picture became clearer, and with it, my heart grew heavier with empathy. But I still needed to hear directly from Claire. One afternoon, when the house was quiet and Michael was at work, I sent her a gentle message, asking if she might be willing to sit down and talk with me, just the two of us, away from the rest of the family. To my surprise, she agreed. We met in a small cafe near her home, a neutral place where the world outside could fade into the background. Claire arrived looking a little nervous but composed, her eyes meeting mine with a mixture of caution and something softer, perhaps a glimmer of hope. I began carefully, choosing my words with care. "Claire, I want to understand. I know things have felt difficult between us, and I want to know what you're feeling, what you need from me." Her hands twined nervously around her coffee cup as she took a deep breath. "It's true," she said quietly. "I've felt overwhelmed for a long time. Being a wife, a mother, trying to keep everything together, it's hard. Sometimes I feel like I'm being watched, judged. I worry that if I make a mistake, you'll be disappointed or critical. I'm afraid of losing control over my family, and that fear makes me pull back." Her honesty pierced through the silence between us. I nodded, acknowledging the vulnerability she was sharing. "Claire, I never intended to make you feel that way. I love this family, and I want to support you, not make things harder. If I've seemed critical or overbearing, I'm truly sorry. I want us to be able to talk openly." She looked relieved, the tension in her shoulders easing. "I want that too," she whispered. "I think we've both been afraid to say how we really feel because we didn't want to cause pain." Our conversation unfolded gently after that, with each of us sharing fears and hopes that had remained unspoken for too long. Claire spoke of her insecurities, the pressure she felt to be perfect in every role she played. I shared my longing to be included, to be a source of comfort rather than conflict. We acknowledged the misunderstandings that had grown like weeds between us, choking the warmth we once shared. By the end of our talk, we agreed on something important: that communication needed to be open and honest, even when it felt difficult. We promised to be patient with each other, to ask questions instead of making assumptions, and to remember that love was the thread holding us together, even when the fabric seemed frayed. Returning home that day, I felt a cautious optimism blooming inside me. The walls of silence and guardedness were beginning to crumble, replaced by a tentative bridge built on empathy and understanding. I realized that the family dynamic was shifting, as all families do, but that with care and attention, those changes could be navigated without losing the bonds we treasured. In the days that followed, I found myself watching Claire with new eyes. There was still a guardedness there, but also moments of warmth and openness that hadn't been present before. I reached out more often, offering small gestures of kindness, a cup of tea, a listening ear, a shared laugh. And slowly, those gestures were met with gratitude rather than distance. One evening, Michael pulled me aside after dinner, a hopeful smile on his face. "Mom, Claire told me about your talk. She's feeling better about things. So am I. I think we're all learning how to be a family in a new way." His words felt like a balm, a reassurance that the path ahead, though uncertain, was one we could walk together. I thought about the grandson whose school play had sparked this journey, the family that had weathered quiet storms, and the possibility that, with understanding, we could find our way back to harmony. Yet, I knew the work was just beginning. Healing required patience, and the past could not be erased overnight. But for the first time in a long while, I felt a lightness, a sense that the walls between Claire and me might one day fall completely away, leaving space for the love and connection we both desired. That night, as I prepared for bed, I reflected on the courage it had taken for both of us to open up. I thought about the power of empathy and the importance of listening, not just hearing words, but truly understanding the feelings behind them. It was a lesson I carried with me, a promise to hold close as I navigated the complexities of family life. In the quiet moments before sleep, I found myself hoping that this newfound understanding would ripple through the family, easing tensions and fostering new bonds. I was ready to meet the challenges ahead with an open heart, determined to nurture the fragile but precious ties that bind us all. The day I decided to invite Claire for a quiet conversation at my home, I felt a mixture of nerves and hope swirling inside me. The tension that had lingered between us for months seemed to press heavily on every family gathering, and I knew that if we were ever to move forward, we needed to break the silence. So, after some gentle persuasion, Claire agreed to meet with me, just the two of us, away from the usual chaos and eyes of the family. I prepared the guest room with soft linens and fresh flowers, hoping to create a space that felt safe and welcoming. When Claire arrived, she seemed tentative but willing, her eyes betraying a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. We sat together in the cozy living room, the afternoon light filtering through the curtains, casting a warm glow around us. I began by acknowledging the elephant in the room, my voice steady but kind. "Claire, I know things have been difficult between us, and I want to understand how you're feeling. I want us to be able to talk honestly, without fear or judgment." She looked down for a moment, then met my gaze, her voice soft but clear. "I've been scared, honestly. Scared that I'm not doing enough, that I'm failing as a wife and mother. And scared that you might think less of me because of it." Her fingers twisted nervously in her lap. "Sometimes I felt like I had to protect myself by keeping you at arm's length." Hearing her speak so openly was both painful and relieving. I reached out, gently placing my hand over hers. "Claire, none of that is true. I love this family, and I want to support you, not make you feel like you're under a microscope. I'm sorry if I ever made you feel judged or overwhelmed." A flicker of relief crossed her face, and the tension in her shoulders eased slightly. We continued to share our feelings, her fears and insecurities, my longing to be a source of comfort rather than conflict. The barriers that had silently grown between us began to crumble as we listened and responded with empathy. As our conversation deepened, we addressed the misunderstandings that had fueled resentment, the unspoken expectations, the assumptions made in silence, the moments when we both felt unseen or unheard. It was a delicate dance of honesty and forgiveness, each word carefully chosen to build trust rather than tear it down. Claire admitted that she sometimes felt overwhelmed by the role she was expected to play, and that my presence, though well-intentioned, occasionally felt like a reminder of those pressures. I shared my own feelings of exclusion and confusion, explaining how much I missed the closeness we once shared. We both agreed that the family needed to be a place of support, not judgment. By the time our conversation drew to a close, we had reached a tentative understanding. We promised to communicate more openly and to give each other the benefit of the doubt when tensions arose. There was a sense of relief, a fragile hope that this was the beginning of healing rather than an end. In the weeks that followed, the change was subtle but meaningful. At family dinners, Claire's guardedness softened, and I noticed moments when her smile reached her eyes. Our interactions became warmer, marked by small acts of kindness and shared laughter. The house felt lighter, as though the weight of unspoken grievances was lifting. One evening, after a bustling holiday meal filled with chatter and children's laughter, Claire pulled me aside. "Thank you for inviting me to talk," she said quietly. "It's helped me see things differently, and I hope we can keep building this." Her words felt like a balm, reassuring me that the connection we were rebuilding was real. Even Michael noticed the shift. He remarked on the ease returning to family gatherings, the way conflict seemed less frequent, and how everyone was making more of an effort to understand one another. It was as if the family was learning a new rhythm, one that honored both individuality and togetherness. Of course, not every interaction was perfect. There were still moments of tension, misunderstandings, and old habits that crept in unexpectedly. But now, when those moments arose, they were met with openness rather than silence. Claire and I found ourselves talking through difficulties rather than letting them fester, a change that brought relief and strengthened our bond. Reflecting on this transformation, I realized how important it was to create space for honest dialogue, especially in families where emotions run deep and histories are long. Avoiding difficult conversations only allows fissures to grow, but facing them with compassion and patience can mend even the most fragile relationships. The grandson whose school play had first brought me to this family gathering remained a bright thread through it all. Watching Ethan grow and thrive reminded me of the importance of family unity and the need to nurture those connections. It was for him, and for all of us, that I was willing to put in the effort to heal and rebuild. One afternoon, as I prepared to leave after a visit, Claire hugged me tightly. "I'm glad we're finding our way back," she whispered. "It means a lot to me." Her embrace was warm, genuine, and I felt the years of distance melt away in that simple moment. As I drove home, I thought about how families evolve and how roles shift over time. The grandmother who once felt sidelined was slowly reclaiming her place, not through force or resentment, but through understanding and grace. I knew the journey wasn't over, but I felt strengthened by the progress we had made together. That night, as I settled into bed, I carried with me a quiet gratitude. The courage to confront discomfort, the willingness to listen deeply, and the commitment to love despite challenges had opened a door. I was ready to walk through it, hopeful that the family I cherished would continue to grow closer, stitch by stitch, day by day. In the weeks that followed our heartfelt conversation, a gentle transformation settled over our family. The once palpable tension that had shadowed every gathering began to lift, replaced by moments of genuine warmth and renewed connection. I found myself feeling more included, my presence no longer met with guarded glances or polite distance, but with open smiles and sincere invitations. Claire's demeanor softened noticeably. The cool reserve I had come to expect gave way to small acts of kindness, a shared cup of tea when I arrived, a quick laugh exchanged in the kitchen, a thoughtful question asked mid-conversation. It was clear that the walls she had built around herself were beginning to come down, brick by brick, revealing the caring woman beneath the layers of fear and insecurity. At family dinners, the atmosphere shifted too. The once fraught silences were replaced by lively chatter, and I noticed how Claire now sought to include me in discussions, even asking for my opinions on matters large and small. Michael, relieved by the easing of tensions between his mother and wife, seemed lighter, more at peace. Watching them interact without the undercurrent of unease was a balm to my soul. Together, we all made a conscious effort to improve communication. Misunderstandings that might have festered before were now addressed openly. When Claire felt overwhelmed, she voiced it rather than retreating, and I responded with empathy rather than judgment. The children sensed the change too. Ethan and his siblings seemed more relaxed, enjoying family time without the invisible barriers that had once separated us. Reflecting on these shifts, I realized how vital patience and empathy had been in bridging the divide. It was a reminder that family relationships are not static, they ebb and flow, require nurturing, and demand honest effort from all sides. The challenges we face taught me that inclusion is not a given but something to be cultivated with care. One afternoon, as I sat with Claire in the garden, she confided how much she had appreciated our recent openness. "I never realized how much fear was holding me back," she admitted softly. "Talking honestly has made a difference I didn't think possible." Her words resonated deeply, affirming the power of vulnerability and trust. I also took time to reflect on my own role in this journey. I acknowledged moments when I might have been too assertive or unintentionally overwhelming, understanding now that love must be balanced with respect for boundaries. This awareness helped me approach my family with renewed humility and grace. The bond between Claire and me, once fragile and strained, was growing stronger. Though not without its imperfections, it was a relationship rooted in mutual respect and a desire to support one another. This new foundation allowed me to feel truly part of the family again, to share in joys and challenges alike. Michael, too, expressed gratitude for the healing that had begun. "Mom, seeing you and Claire build this connection has brought peace to our home," he said one evening. "It reminds me that families can overcome even the toughest moments when we choose understanding over judgment." As I watched Ethan perform in another school play, the pride I felt was now sweeter, unclouded by past tensions. The family gathered around me, laughter and affection filling the room. In that moment, I was reminded of the resilience of love and the strength that comes from facing difficulties together. Through this experience, I learned that patience and empathy are not just virtues but necessities in nurturing family ties. I understood that evolving roles within a family can bring uncertainty but also opportunities for growth. Most importantly, I saw that opening one's heart to honest dialogue can transform relationships in profound ways. Though challenges remain, and not every day is perfect, the journey toward harmony continues with hope and commitment. I carry with me the lessons learned, the importance of listening deeply, forgiving freely, and embracing change with courage. Now, as I sit by the window, watching the seasons shift outside, I feel a quiet contentment. The family I love is still learning, still growing, but the bonds that hold us together are stronger than ever. And in that strength, I find peace and purpose, ready to face whatever comes next with an open heart. If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe.